everybody. My name is Carrie Pace, and I am the art teacher at a school called Steam Middle School in St. Louis, Missouri. It's part of the Ferguson-Florissant School District, and I am here on behalf of the Scottish Partnerships of Arts and Education. And you guys are all participating in what we are calling the Art and Science of Felting. So this video accompanies a whole folder of things that you should have to get you started with getting your students engaged and involved in this really cool project that bounces back and forth between the similarities and the way arts and sciences can really support students in both learning about science and experimenting with art and really seeing a lot of those cross-curricular connections. So this video is to help with the how-to of the art and science of felting. So in your folder, there should be a list of materials that you need. One of the most important materials is going to be that felting wool. So your felting wool, you can order at Amazon. There are stores around town that you can probably go into and buy this from, but Amazon has a whole slew of options. And for this, you don't need too much just for this little demo, but there are these nice little packages that you can order online, and I have put a link to a small, like a small set of it. But these little sort of adorable tiny felts come in these little individualized bags. And inside, when you unroll them, you just have this wide variety of really beautiful colors. So number one, you have got to have your felt. Number two, you need something that is going to hold the fibers of your felt as you start this process. So we have found that if you use either a shelf liner, so this is like a rubbery shelf liner, or this is even a what goes under a carpet or a rug to keep it from skidding. So this kind of rubbery texture is what you need. So I have put a link to something on the materials sheet that will lead you to something like this. But what's nice is you can get huge rolls, or you can get these gigantic, like 8 by 10 foot squares of it, and cut these into smaller sections for your students. So I have taken what was a carpet pad, this rubber carpet pad, and this is probably 8 by 10 inches. This is going to be perfect for this demo and a perfect size for students. So I've got my felt, I have got my rubber mat. You're going to need a grocery bag. You are going to need some soap, and any kind of soap works, whether it's dish soap or it's that pump soap on the wall of your classroom, a container for some warm water, and if you are trying to contain your messes, which art teachers I know range from, I don't care about a big old soapy watery mess, to, oh no, I need my classroom under control. If you are one of those teachers who wants to kind of contain things, this is a larger, those disposable aluminum pans that you can get at the grocery store. What's great about these is you can get a set of 10 or 20 and keep reusing them and reusing them. So this is something that myself and my teaching partner, Gina, who's the science teacher doing this, we have used and really, really liked. So if you've got your pan, you've got your felt, you've got your plastic bag, you have got your rubber mat, your soap, and a container for some water and a mix of that soap, you are good to go. These are the simplest materials outside of kind of ordering the felt. The materials are really simple, and these rubber mats will last you for years to come. This will be all you need. So we are going to get into our demo here in just a second. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So what you are seeing right now in front of you is my workspace. So I have this large disposable aluminum pan. You may even be trying this with like a cookie sheet right now, which I imagine will work just as well as this. I'm going to start by taking my little rubber carpet pad, and I'm going to set this down at the bottom. And what I have in front of me are some of my felts. So the way that this felting process works is I am going to just start with one color, and the felt will kind of start in a ball like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to unroll it, and you're going to see that these fibers, I mean, this is pretty tough. These fibers are pretty stuck together, and we're going to need to start pulling them apart in these very sort of feathery, what a lot of people will call shingles. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use my fingers this way. So I've kind of spread this out. I'm going to use my fingers this way, put this in my palm, and I am going to pull. So now I have this nice little feathery little set of full wool fibers. So I'm going to keep doing that until I have a nice little layer that fits most of my little rubber mat. And I'm going to layer them on top of each other a little bit. If you think kind of like shingles on a roof, that's kind of a great way to think about it. And the truth is, as you are doing this and as students do this, the things that I pull tend to be a little bit thinner. Some students will pull things a little bit thicker. You want to discourage students from pulling too thick of sections. But part of the science connection with this is as students do this, they will start to find that if they do things a certain way, they're going to yield better results. And so one of the things that was important for Gina and I to build into this project is the opportunity for students to do this multiple times. So you may take this skill and just do this once with your art students just as a fun felting activity. But if you are pulling in the science pieces of it, we encourage you to have your students do it more than once. I'm seeing some areas are a little bit thin here. I may go in and add a little bit more, but this is just a first layer. I'm going to add a second layer of this felting wool, but I'm going to have it go a totally different direction, because what Gina will have taught you and what the science of these fibers will have taught you is that those little rough edges, as they start to cross, they will, when we get into the next agitation phase, they will start to tighten up around each other. And I'm going to pull in some other colors too. You can start to build in imagery to this if you want. I'm just going to do a little bit more of kind of an abstract little piece of felt here, so that way I can concentrate a little bit more on what I'm saying to you and a little less on the end product of this. But so now I'm going a second direction. And if I decide I want to maybe get some, you know, kids, they love that ombre stuff. You know, I may stop with this and go back to my purple. But again, I've started a second layer, and what I'm doing is I am overlapping a little bit. Maybe we'll go into some green. I'm still going now horizontal. My first layer tended to be, or it was, all vertical. So now I'm going to do this more horizontally. Spread this out so I can do that trick where I'm wrapping my fingers around this and pulling a bit of a wider layer. And I'm starting to see kind of how these colors might interact together. Okay, so I've got this second layer. It looks a little bit light up here. I might go in and add a little more just to thicken this area up. But I'm going to do one more layer, and I'm going to go vertical again. And honestly, some artists or art teachers or felters may tell you to start to go more diagonal, just to kind of mix up that direction. But as long as you're really switching that direction, you are putting those fibers in a position to really start to catch on to one another, okay? And the first time anyone does this, sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're really not. But that is where that science relationship comes in, because what you end up starting to find out is what works and what doesn't. And one of those things that I think is quite cool is really pointing out to students that connection between the arts and sciences. So I have a twin brother who's a scientist, and he studies the co-infection of AIDS and tuberculosis. And I think it's interesting thinking about the connections that there are between me as an artist and my twin brother as a scientist, who many would say, oh my gosh, those two things really couldn't be more different. But in fact, there are so many similarities because as a scientist and an artist, your eyes are always looking for details. You're looking for those things to compare. If you are an artist and you only draw a dog once, there's not much that you could sort of tell or relate to someone about what it means to draw a dog. If you're an artist and you've drawn a dog 100 times, you could start to really tell people different things about what it means to draw a dog. You start to see all of those little details and differences and the anatomy of that dog. So there are a lot of similarities. Oh, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and just add some kind of more decorative things in here. So some little flashes of yellow. And my camera, the whites are a little blue, so the colors are not as vibrant on this video as what I'm seeing, but I know you guys are going to make gorgeous things. But back to that kind of comparison of the art and the scientists, it's that looking, it's that using those eyes to really find and capture details. I'm even going to do a little something else in here, just kind of for fun, just to see what happens with this process, because part of that science and art is just experimenting. So I'm just going to add, I don't know, a few little pops of this orange, maybe just as some decoration. So I had 3 layers that really act as my base. And now I'm just kind of throwing some things on top, just as some little pop and some decoration. Okay. If there are lighter places, you may want to fill that in, but I have this good start. So I'm going to pull this away, and I have my container of water here. I'll put it over here so you can see it better. The camera looks a little bubbly, that kind of fisheye thing. I'm going to add a little bit of soap. And this is one of those other things that you kind of experiment with. You just want to make sure that soap gets mixed up in there. And this is where I'm getting that grocery bag out. And I am literally just going to use this grocery bag and take this soapy water, and I am going to cover this felt in this soapy water. And again, there's a learning curve with this. The more you practice this, the more you kind of realize, oh, I may need a little more or a little less water. That's also kind of where that science connection comes in. How much water is too much? How much water is too little? Although it's a little harder to do too much water. So when I take this off, I don't want these fibers to grab onto this bag, so I'm kind of pulling it off this way. Let's see, I could use a little bit more water in these corners. And some people might use a sponge to kind of squeeze some water out. I am just letting you know the simplest materials is literally just 1 grocery bag is all you need. I have seen other people use bubble wrap on top as a way to start this process. So in the beginning, really what I'm wanting to do is just get to a place where I can flatten this down. And this looks pretty good. I'm just going to maybe use my hands here and kind of cover some of these areas that I see are a little dry. All right. So now I'm going to start the next process, which is this agitation process. And what I'm doing is I am just slowly going to I'm going to be really successful with this. I am going to start, this is kind of like almost like a head massage or something. I'm using my fingers to just kind of dig in lightly at first into those fibers. All right, and I see that we're still doing good here. I'm gonna move this soapy mess out because I don't think we need that anymore. And I'm going to continue to kind of do this. I apologize for a little bit of a shaky camera. But in time, the idea is I agitate more and more. So I'm starting lightly, and I slowly will agitate a little bit more and a little bit more. And the truth is, this process can take some time. So for starters, if I were to just get my fingers in here, I can tell things would just kind of pull up. But now I might be at a place where I can maybe do something a little more like this to agitate it. Something a little bit rougher. I'm seeing some fibers kind of pull down here. Might scooch these in a little bit so those don't fray. So I'm starting to get just a little bit rougher and a little bit rougher. And honestly, this is the part where a lot of students and a lot of people kind of start to make mistakes, is because they think they're finished well before they are finished. The agitation process really can take some time. And you're starting really with that bag, or if you have bubble wrap, you can try bubble wrap. Like I can see here, this is not connected. This is still kind of lifting up. So I want to make sure I am agitating and really kind of mixing up, you know, these fibers in these different spots. You'll get to a place where you should be able to take your felt and even kind of start to roll it up. If I move my bag away, I can kind of do what maybe looks like a little bit like a sushi roll. I'll roll this up and see how nice this pan is, everybody. It's just holding all that in. I can start to agitate this way. So I can start to give it a little bit more of that friction so those fibers really, really start to connect and really start to pull together. I'm going to unroll this. Maybe I'll roll it this way. And this is kind of a fun, this part is kind of fun for students. But this part is also really important for students. And what Gina and I found was a lot of students did not do the agitating enough and did not do enough of that rough agitation to really get this to work. When you're at a certain point, you should be able to pick up your felt. If you can't pick this up and pull this up easily, you might sushi roll it a little more. You might use that bag a little more. But I can really then start to fold this up into a ball. And I have seen some people teach felt where they like to show their kids that you can take this ball and you can slam it down. That is not my favorite, because then you have students just wanting to throw little balls of felt around. However, I do know some teachers who do that and have success with it. I'm going to kind of unroll this again so I can see that this is starting to really stick together. But I'm just going to agitate it in a few more ways. Just kind of squeeze and rinse. And I am doing a rather quick demo of this. Oftentimes for students, the whole process of actually laying out the felt and agitating the felt with all that soap and water so it's successful can take about 30 minutes. So what I'm doing in 15 might really take 30 for students, especially if you're having to kind of float, around and help. There is no exact way to do this, but the more you do it and you kind of have that scientist's eye, the more that things will start to click in how they work. So I am at a pretty good place right now. You can do what's called the tent test. So if I pull, just take a little pinch and pull. Let me see if I can hold this up to the camera in a different way. A little pinch and pull. When I see all these fibers kind of sticking together, I know I'm in a good spot. I'm still a little concerned about this. If I pinch and pull, I don't know that that is going to stick well. I could maybe kind of work on some of those things that were added a little bit more. Maybe they need a little bit more squishing. But that, in essence, is how you make felt. It's fairly simple. You have at least 3 layers where you are going back and forth with your colors. If you are wanting to add some details on top, you can. And then you are wringing this out. And to get the soap out, I will take this to the sink and just kind of run it under lukewarm water to get all of that soap out. And then I will let it dry. So you can see already that this is starting to turn into this kind of beautiful landscapey piece of felt. So I hope that you guys have the same success with this and doing a practice piece of felt. And if you don't, just remember that is oftentimes what those students go through. And that's when you really put that scientist hat on and you say, okay, what worked? Do I have some little holes in the bottom here? So I need to make sure it's thicker. Do I need to do a little more agitation? If I'm adding a bigger chunk at the end, what really stuck? What really didn't? And you start to make those observations so you can use those observations to make changes going forward. So in just a minute, I'm going to meet you back here with a dried piece of felt and show you some examples of things that work and things that didn't work. I will see you soon. All right, everybody, and we are back. And I have this dried piece of felt that I feel like turned out rather beautiful. This camera shows the colors a little bit more than the one I was demoing on. So a lot of success here, although certainly areas that if I put my scientist hat on, my artist hat, where I am looking for particular things that I think I might make adjustments with if I were to do this in the future. And I had a hunch, and we kind of talked about this, that this little orange piece here may not be connected so well. And then I also see some areas in the bottom that are a little bit lighter, a little bit more frayed. And those are things that I might jot down and make a note of so I don't forget next time, or things that I just sort of might, I feel like artists, we kind of make mental notes and scientists sort of make much more detailed and concrete notes. But I feel like artists could really oftentimes learn a lot from scientists by being a little bit more deliberate in how we approach things and how we think of things. So I could take this, and this could just function as a work of art all on its own. It's lovely. It kind of looks like this cool little landscape. It could be something where I trim the edges. You can certainly cut this with scissors really easily. I have also done with students in the past, I've combined it with some embroidery lessons. And there's a felting artist, Moy Mackey, that is on the Google slide presentation, who uses landscapes as her inspiration. And she has this mobile felting van that she takes out and just kind of soaks in the environment and does these gorgeous, these beautiful felt works of art. But one of the things that she does is she does add in some embroidery, and it does kind of add a nice contrast, because with felt, you don't usually get those really sharp, clean edges. I have an example of a student who really wanted to try and get those clean edges and make a heart. But this student, as they put their scientist hat on and their artist hat on, realized that trying to make something like this that was in these sort of larger chunks either needed to be agitated in a different way or maybe laid out in a different way. So here's an example of a student work that was not as successful. They left it behind. They didn't even want it. But then the next time this student made something, they made something successful that they wanted to take home and they wanted to keep. So recognizing where your work is and where you want it to be is a wonderful thing. And then also knowing what changes to implement to get you from here's my starting point to where do I want my ending point to be. Some other less successful student works, a kid who maybe just kind of slapped some things together quicker. This just has a lot of kind of these broken up areas. These chunks were probably just a little bit too big. The student left his behind. But then, some other more successful student examples, things that were done a little more thoughtfully, a little bit more deliberately, paying attention to those layers and the agitation process. Here's a student example that I did. So it is possible to get these thicker chunks in. It's just that process where you are adding motion and you are adding agitation has to really be done thoroughly to make it successful. So in the end, I hope that you all ended up with something successful. However, failure is okay, and that is how, as artists and as scientists, we learn and we make adjustments. So I hope that you really enjoyed this. Again, my name is Carrie Pace, my science teaching partner, Gina Pareda. We have loved doing this together. And for those students who love the sciences, but maybe more nervous about the arts, this is a great way to get them more comfortable taking risks in art, and vice versa. Those students who love art and maybe are a little more science averse, pointing out all of those connections and how they relate and how the processes really can be so similar can make science more exciting for someone maybe who is more drawn to the arts. So constantly using those connections when you are teaching this to students, it's just an awesome way to help students realize that learning doesn't always happen in little silos, and it shouldn't happen in silos. The more we sort of embrace and recognize how much things are connected, the better all of our products become. And the more we appreciate what other people do who maybe be in like a wide variety of fields. So thank you so much for joining me today. Again, I am Carrie Pace. I am a middle school art teacher at STEAM Academy in St. Louis. It's part of the Ferguson-Florissant School District. It's a phenomenal school with the most amazing kids, so shout out to them. I hope that you are all well, and I hope you get a chance to try this and really embed that science piece in it. So have a most wonderful day.